Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In the last video we discussed about the Azure subscription. It is the boundary where you control your resources, control your billing and manage your resources, and it's the mother of the Azure resources where all the Azure resources live within the Azure subscription. In today's video we are going to talk about the Azure Resource Manager, or ARM. I want you to think of the Azure Resource Manager as if you are working in a large company, in a large team. When you need to do something from, like, let's say the HR team, something to be done, you just don't simply go and talk to that team directly. Instead, you speak to their manager, and their manager is going to validate who you are, what the kind of request is it actually should be done by the HR team, and then go ahead and assign that task for a specific resource in this team. Azure Resource Manager works the same way. If you would like to deploy or create any resource like virtual machine or storage or network, you need to speak with the Azure Resource Manager. Then the Azure Resource Manager start to validate who you are. Do you have permissions to execute resources in the subscription? Is the deployment is right? And then go ahead and speak to the resource provider. And then from the resource provider is going to create that resource for you. By the end of this video, you are going to fully understand how the Azure Resource Manager works. We are going also to do a simple demo where we are going to list the resource provider. We are going to use GitHub Copilot to create resources and see how many different ways that you can interact with the Azure Resource Manager. Ready to make your Azure Cloud your comfortable zone? Let's get started. Alright, before we get started, I just want to show you the documentation that we are going to discuss today, and then I will also walk you through the resource creation within the Azure Portal. But the first one is this one here from the Microsoft, what is the Azure Resource Manager? And then you can see that there are many different ways to be able to create the resource. So the regular way, or what I'm showing here on the graphical user interface, is you can use the Azure Portal, and then you have the Azure PowerShell, CLI, or even REST API, or even client SDKs, right? Then they all talk to the Azure Resource Manager to validate your request, and then start to talk to the resource provider. So this documentation is pretty much explaining what we are doing today. So whenever you create a resource, you have to speak to the Azure Resource Manager first, then it goes and talk to the Azure Resource Provider, and I will talk about this in the whiteboard. But notice here from the last session that we discussed the Azure subscription. Remember, this is your your boundary, or the mother of the Azure resources. And then if we click here, you will find that there are something called the Azure Resource Provider here. So whenever you create any service, you have to you have to talk to the Azure Resource Manager first, and then it goes to that resource provider. And I will draw this in a minute. But let's just take a look at the storage here. So whenever I try to create any service, it has to contact this resource provider. And as you can see from this resource provider, you can see that there are storage accounts. If you're trying to create blob storage, for example, then it will talk to the storage account, or the storage account Microsoft.storage provider, then goes to the storage account, and then /blob services. So and then it will go ahead, and the Azure Resource Provider will go ahead and create that for you. If you go to any resource here, let's just take a look. Storage account, you will see that there is a path for that storage, or for this guy. So if I go down here to the endpoints, as you can see, there is a path for blob storage. For example, here it goes from your subscription, then the subscription ID. Remember from the last one. So if I go back to this subscription, every Azure subscription has its ID. It's unique from from each other. So you can see 8ED5. If you go back here, it's 8ED5. So this is the location of your resource. So it starts by the subscriptions, then your subscription ID, then resource groups, I will talk about what is resource groups in the next video, but just for now, just it's in the Azure resource groups, then the resource group name. Then look at this. This is the Azure Resource Provider. So this is the provider that is responsible for the creation of your storage account. So it goes to the provider Microsoft Azure Storage. So which, if I go back here and then click on the resource provider, as I mentioned here, so this is the storage. Let me just search for it. Microsoft Storage Provider. So Microsoft Storage Provider. Then storage accounts, then my storage account name, and then it talks to the blob service. So to create a blob storage, then it has to speak to the blob services. Okay, if it's table, then table, queue, file services, etc., etc. Okay, and this will show you the API version and so on. Now let's jump into the whiteboard just to explain in details how actually when you are creating a new Azure resource, how actually you are talking to the the Azure Resource Manager, and then we will do a demo as well from here. All right, so we have this your Azure subscription, and this is where you create all, or this is where your Azure subscription, this is where all your resources live in. So let's now just think about something here. Is this is your this is you, the end user, need to have an account. Okay, so the account exists here in Microsoft Entra. So this is your account. So what you need to do is first is authenticate to the Microsoft Entra ID, or formerly known as Azure Active Directory. Once you are authorized, then there is a trust relationship between the Azure subscription and then your Microsoft Entra ID tenant. There are different ways, I would say, there are different ways that you can create resources or modify resources, whether delete, change, and so on. The first way is to, this is the most popular, go through the Azure Portal, or the the GUI, the graphical user interface. You can also use the CLI. You can use PowerShell through the command, and you have also the REST API, or even client SDKs. Okay. Now you're just telling, you would like to, you're in the Azure portal, you just want to create a new virtual machine or Azure storage. So what happens here, you have to, before you go to the resource provider, this is your client, so you have to talk to the Azure Resource Manager. Okay, so ARM. This is just a manager here. So you go, your user here, whatever is the approach. Okay, so now you do it in different ways, through code, through the graphical user interface. You have to first, the Azure ARM has to validate this request. So I have to make sure that do you have actually permissions to so it validates your role-based access control. So do you have permissions to create resources? Let's say you are owner, then okay, you're passed. And then it also check the Azure policy. So there is another service called policies. So policies basically, you can define it as an administrator. We're gonna dive deep into this, but basically, although you are owner, but maybe you're not allowed to create resources in the US region. You're only allowed to create it on the UK region. So even if you have owner permission, but there is policy that is blocking you from, from allowing you to create resources within the subscription or within this specific region. So if you passed both of them, then the Azure Resource Manager is going to forward the request to the resource provider. So in this case, you're trying to create a storage account. Then it will talk to the storage, Microsoft.storage resource provider. Tell it exactly your request. Also, it will validate here if your request actually is right, you're creating the right way. Okay, so all of this, like maybe if you're deploying this through code, so if there any syntax error, then it will just deny it. Okay, so this is not valid. So it also validate all of this kind of stuff. So it's check the which region, the storage size, all of this kind of stuff, and then it will tell the storage account or the Microsoft storage resource provider, go and create this for this user account. And then once it's created, then it will just give you the message, hey, this was successful, or maybe access denied or whatever. So also Azure Resource Manager log log the request, who created the service, and so on. So also there's the activity log, which we will see also from the Azure Portal. It will log every single thing that you do through the the Azure subscription. So another thing that I just wanted to highlight also, there are different methodologies to build that. You can at the end of the day, whatever you're doing here are actually JSON. So it's gets translated into JSON format. So JSON is just a declarative language. You tell it what are you trying to do. Hey, I need a storage account and so on. And then the size of the storage account, all of these are defined in this template. And then also get pushed to the Azure Resource Manager. And then the Azure Resource Manager will check that one. If you've already created the resource, it will ignore it. If not, then it will just create that resource for you. Or if you're trying to modify the resource size, all of this, so it will just go ahead and modify or check that what are you trying to do here, maybe change the storage type from standard to premium, whatever. Then it will just apply the changes, and that's it. So we call it the Azure Resource Manager template, or ARM templates. Okay, there is also another way to create or to build infrastructure as code, like your Bicep templates. So Bicep also a new a better version of ARM templates. It's easier. Microsoft actually developed this one, and this is only runs for Azure, doesn't run for any other cloud provider. So basically it is a bit easier version from ARM template, or from the JSON template. So also you can use it to create resources as well. So again, the Azure Portal is nice, but if you would like to create 5 or 10 resources or 20 resources, it won't be practical. So you have to build all of these in templates. There is also other way that you can use Terraform. So if you are comfortable with Terraform, you can also build all of your your code in Terraform, and then it uses the the REST API. So it will talk to the Azure Resource Manager through the REST API. It's not gonna be converted to JSON like Bicep. So it will use the REST API, and then the Azure Resource Manager will validate again the everything in terms of RBAC policies and so on, and then go ahead and create the Azure storage. Okay, so as I mentioned, there are different ways to use the or to create resources. So I'm just going to use here Visual Studio Code. This is just the community edition, you can go and download it for free. And then I have also a GitHub Copilot license here. So this is where I would just use the LLM or my GitHub Copilot agent to list the services for me. So the first way to interact is by logging to the Azure Portal from the CLI. So I can just do easy login. And once I do that, then the agent will be able to create resources. So I have signed in here successfully. So you just need to enter your username and password, and then you should be good to go. So before you use that, you have to also create or download the CLI. So you can just go from Microsoft documentation and then go and download the Azure CLI, or even install it here. Then here, GitHub Copilot can help me to do stuff over here. So as you can see from GitHub Copilot, There are agents. It's not a one agent. There is an O2 or model router that switch depends on your request. But there are GPT models. There are Claude, Gemini, and so on. Now, what I will ask GitHub Copilot here is to list the resource provider. So I would like to list the Azure resource providers in my subscription. So as you can see right now, it's thinking, and then it will go ahead and execute that command for me. So it's just asking me to allow me, can you allow me to run this command? And then it will go ahead and do AZ provider list. If you're not logged in here, it will ask you to log in first. So that's why I just done a login here. Notice that whatever we have seen from the Azure subscription here, if I go back to the resource provider from my subscription, it is exactly the same thing. So if we click here, it is just listing the resource provider. Okay. So then maybe I can just go back one more time, and then maybe I would like to focus in the on the storage account. So I can say list the storage account provider, and what can I create from this provider. So notice here, like we logged in, so that's mean I am logged as my user account, and then because I have owner permission on the subscription, I'm able to list all of these providers. And then GitHub Copilot is just running these commands. I don't really need to memorize anything. And then as you can see, it's showing me all the details about the regions that is allowed to create storage accounts. Also, it's showing me here the providers or the services that I can talk to it. Yeah, can you see? This is the type blob services that I can use. The other one here, the Azure Storage Account List Services, the API version, and so on. Notice here that it's returning a JSON format. So everything that we do when we interact with the Azure services, it's actually translated to JSON. And then here it's also showing me the resource provider. It's the same thing if I'm just coming here and then searching for storage account or the storage account resource provider, and then click on Microsoft Storage. You can see here these are the list of the available services for me. Okay. If I would like also to take a look at Compute, for example, resource provider, then you just also can take a look. It's the same thing. So what can I create from that resource provider is availability sets, virtual machines, extensions, scale set, and so on. So all of these are available within the Azure Resource Provider. Now, if this is not registered, so you won't be able to create any virtual machine or anything related to virtual machines. Okay, so things like images, etc., etc. So to be able to register, either you're gonna register the resource provider from the CLI, or you just can click on, let's say, Microsoft AVS, and then click on register. Okay, and that way, so if I select here, I can just click on register, and then it will go to the register status. So sometimes when you are creating resources, if it's telling you, hey, you cannot create resource because the resource provider is not registered, so you know where to go. Okay. Now I mentioned that there are a variety of ways to do, to create a resources. Like, let's say we would like to create 5 Azure storage account and with 5 resource groups. So I just can tell GitHub Copilot to do that for me. So I just can say, hey, I want you to create 5 Azure storage account, and the resource, in UK region, for example, we need to be very specific, and the storage account SQ is standard, and then the resource groups names should start with RG dash storage, and add 1, 2, 3, etc. So I will just send that prompt to my GitHub Copilot, and then GitHub Copilot will start to to reason, and then start to plan. But let me stop this first. Let me copy paste again this guy, and then I want all of this in Bicep. Please go ahead and create it for me. I will pause the recording. It will just take a few seconds, and then we'll come back to it again. So as you can see, the the agent started to create my Bicep files here. I can just click on keep, which means that started to build my code. Zero knowledge of code, so you don't need to memorize anything. You just need to know the structure or how the things are going to work. But it started to create everything for me, including the storage account that I have specified through natural language. There is also it created a README file, and it's just showing you how to run this infrastructure as code file, and then it's just telling me here, hey, I have created all of this. I'm ready to deploy whenever you are. So it ran all of this. It created 5 to-dos and so on. So this is like GitHub Copilot basically. So for the people who doesn't know, this is an AI pair programmer that you can buy for each developer, and then it's pretty much can write anything you want, whether it's infrastructure as code, whether it's C# or Java, JavaScript, whatever. So it just can work for you here, and then I will tell now the the GitHub Copilot, please go ahead and execute that Bicep template for me. So please go and deploy it into my subscription. My Azure subscription. Okay, it's wrong English, but that's it will just know what I'm talking about here. So as you can see, it's planning now, and then it will just go ahead and use the Azure CLI to push that ARM template for me. So it's just asking me, hey, I'm going to do that. So it said allow, and now it will use my my CLI. It realized that there is a new Bicep template is available, and then it went ahead and installed these resources for me. So I just can allow, and then now it's now doing easy deployment. It's referencing my template file, the location of the template file, and now it's creating this one. I can see here there's an error. I can just ask GitHub Copilot also to upgrade that for me. If it's not working actually, or with that legacy version, it will actually upgrade the Bicep for me automatically. So it's now thinking, checking why it's failed actually, and then it will fix, it says here the resource group dependency. So I think it forgot to create the resource group. So just go ahead and keep, and then updating the template to fix the resource group, and then redeploying again the the GitHub template, or the Bicep template, sorry. So now it seems that it successfully created everything for me. Let me just, it was validating, I think, right? So let me just double check that. Yeah. If I go back to my Azure subscription here, I should see 5 resource groups. So as you can see, it is creating this resource group with the same context: RG storage 1, storage 2, storage 3, storage 4, storage 5. I think it's created storage 6, and then every every resource group here got one Azure storage account, and the location is UK South. If I click on this storage account, I will be able to see it's standard and it's locally redundant LRS, and then it's general v2. So that's why I really focus on the Azure Portal, just to make sure that you really understand, but everything else you can do through vibe coding. It's very straightforward. If you know how to to write or if you know what you're doing, then basically you just can do it through GitHub Copilot, and then you should be good to go. The other thing here, it is just listing listing the status of the deployment, and then it is just showing me hey, I've created this successfully. So it also validate what we have asked as well, and then it's validating the the deployment. So now it's giving you a report. I have created these storage accounts, these resource groups, and then I'm good to go. Now I can just say, hey, okay, all good, working fine, so please go ahead and delete what you have created for me. So as you can see here, because there was a problem with my internet, so now it's just listing the resources that GitHub Copilot has created, and then it will go ahead and start deleting everything that this guy was created. So it will just do it now. So it listed the resources, and now it will go ahead and delete everything on my subscription. So if I refresh, then I should be able to see that it's going to delete this one. So it's working on it now. As you can see, it ran a few commands here just to showing the status. It's deleting. And then if we go back here, we should be able to see that there is it's getting deleted. So it will take some time, but if I go back here, I just wanted to show you one more thing here, because we talked about the activity log, right? So if I go from the Azure subscription itself, then I should be able to see the activities in the last 6 hours, and I can see now there was a create deployment, and then it's showing you exactly what's happening and the details of that deployment. That we use the the Azure storage resources and so on. Okay. So now there's a kickoff a minute ago, and then this is an order to delete resource groups, and then you can see my email address that I'm using here. So I'm just deleting everything that's what we are doing at the moment. And then if I now I think it's completed successfully. So if I go back to my resource groups, I can see that there is nothing now in here. So now the GitHub Copilot deleted everything for me. We have seen the activity log on the Azure subscription, and again, because of my account is the administrator or the owner, I have the account admin here. So I was able to create, delete resources. I can do it through the Azure Portal. I can do it through the Bicep template. I can do it through the CLI, PowerShell, and so on. If you didn't understand the demo of today and how would you use GitHub Copilot and how would you use Visual Studio Code, don't worry, we're not targeting in this video how can you use this tools. This is going to be covered in a later playlist, but this is just scratching the surface and showing you how would you interact and create resources, whether from the Azure Portal or from the CLI or using the Bicep template. I hope this video was useful for you. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.